excited to welcome you guys to our first ever Enlightenment Expo here in San Francisco. So hopefully this is going to continue to be a regular event. We do these all over the Bay Area, San Rafael, Santa Clara, Burlingame, and we want to continue expanding here as well. And as you guys have seen, we have incredible spiritual guides and healers here with us all weekend, including Renee Blodgett and Anthony Compagnon. I actually took many courses with them years ago, goddess courses where they would bring through the different goddess energies. But now their main teachers, the main energies that they're bringing through are actually Yeshua, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene. And it's very powerful because Yeshua and Mary Magdalene are bringing through these transformative energies for this time. And so we're really blessed and honored to have both of you here with us to be sharing these energies, to support us in that balancing the masculine and feminine. And I invite you guys to also ask questions later on to the guides, and also to keep in touch with Anthony and Renee because they have incredible memberships and programs that you can keep working with them and connecting with Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, and many more. So without further ado,
thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, Tangela. Thank
you.
Well, great. It's great to have you all here. This is, as Tangela said, the first Enlightenment Expo in San Francisco, and it's near and dear to our heart because we used to live here. And so we only left about 5 years ago. We live in Marin now, but we love SF. So thanks for being here. And I guess if you're here, you're interested in some level the divine masculine and divine feminine and what that means, right? There's an energy that runs through both of us. As our guides kind of explain it, it kind of comes through and it kind of works through both of our energies.
So it will first come through Renee, and then it comes into me. That it will always come through the divine feminine first before it comes to the divine masculine. So that's kind of how it works. When I do go into channel, I'll have our guides come through first. They are we refer to them as the Ascended Masters, but they are, they're a whole host. Our guides are very funny guys. They're very funny. So
we refer to them as the Ascended Masters.
They'll refer to themselves as like a bunch of old Jewish men sometimes. Okay. And then as time goes on, Yeshua will come through, and then Miriam of Magdal as well. And when you see that happen, you'll see a shift in my energy. Miriam of Magdal is very straightforward with you. She's all about divine feminine, and she's a very strong being.
She's all about divine feminine in the sense that she wants women or the feminine energy to speak their truth. Yeah. And that it's long overdue, that the planet has been out of balance for so long, and that now it's time to really balance those two energies that exist in all of us, right? So even though that's what she stands for and that's what she represents, she tends to have more masculine energy than Yeshua does. Yeshua is actually more of the feminine, soft, healing kind of energy when he comes through. So you'll see that today.
Let me see what else. I usually let her do all the talking because once I go into channel, they start talking. Yeah. I'm more of an introvert and she's more of the extrovert. But to practice divine feminine and divine masculine in your own life, you have to find a balance between both, like I had to. I come from the Bronx, from New York.
Italian,
Bronx.
97% Italian.
I am finding my Jewish roots again through Miriam and Yeshua. And it is quite an experience. Remember, when you're on your path, it's going to change the more you do the work. It's like anything. And you go with that work. You go with the changes. Don't try to put a stop on it. Just go with it and see where it takes you. Yeah. So for Renee and myself, if I try to channel by myself, I can do it. However, it's not the same. They really need her next to me. Without Renee, I can't do this by myself. It would be impossible. There are channelers that can do this. But for us, I need the divine feminine next to me.
They want, in
to
fact,
ground
the
me.
guides, will talk about how, oh, it must come through the divine feminine first. So what does that mean, and why is that important? I think the reason, at least, that our guides will talk about that in general, the Ascended Masters, Yeshua, Magdalene, and other energies that we channel, is really, as we mentioned earlier, that it's been out of balance for so long, right? So does that mean the divine force of the feminine needs to just rise? Yeah, it does. It needs to rise. But we need to be in balance on a global level. And so what that means is for each of us to step into that balance within ourselves. So it doesn't matter what sex or gender you are, because we all carry masculine and feminine energies within each of us, all of us, right? And so it's really dancing with those energies so that when we're in a very strong masculine state and we're aware of that, that we can be aware in that moment, readjust, bring more of the feminine energy in and balance. And from that place, that's where you'll feel balanced, right? You'll feel at peace.
And so when you start to feel balanced in both masculine and feminine, you'll know it, as the guides will say, and then you come back to one.
Because everything's just in pure flow.
Right.
It's like that zone, when you're doing something that you're super passionate about it and you're in the flow, you're in the zone. That's when you're in that beautiful divine masculine and feminine balance.
So for me personally, for me to balance divine feminine, masculine, I'm a martial artist. I love martial arts. I like lifting weights, but that's also very masculine in a sense. So to balance that, I have to do a lot of prayer, a lot of yoga, things that are, for me, more feminine in nature. So yoga is very more feminine and flowy for me. Prayer is very important. Meditation is very important. I have to balance all the time, because if I don't, then other things start happening to me. I'll know that I'm becoming out of balance. But for you, all of you, your personal journeys are going to be different. How are you going to find that balance in your lives? How are you going to find it on your spiritual path? They won't say. They'll say it's up to you. Yeah. And what they'll also say, what's important, is that they'll say, we are no different than you. We are the same. Which means they're talking about they're simply in spirit form when they come through, but we are too. And I think that your great hubby was talking about that too, about being in spirit form.
Yeah. And when we're in spirit form, our guides will also say, by the way, that there is no masculine and feminine at all. It doesn't even exist. We're just energy. So when we feel that, when the Yeshua energy comes through, and Anthony is, as a full embodied channel, literally brings forth the soul of Yeshua as it once was over 2,000 years ago. And in that form, they will say, over 2,000 years ago, I manifest, this is the language they use, I manifested myself as a feminine form of Miriam of Magdala 2,000 years ago. But really, I'm just energy.
Yeah, so that's another thing that we have to try to wrap our brains around. That when Yeshua comes through, remember, it is the soul that comes through and manifests itself through us.
Yeah.
But it will manifest itself and say, I am Yeshua. And Miriam will say, I am Mariam of Magdala. But remember that the people, the human beings, no longer exist, but the soul does. Your souls, your individual souls, are infinite.
This is just a perception, right? So our physical beings, our physical selves, is merely a perception. It's not real. It's manifested.
It certainly feels real the older you get, I can tell you that. Perception or no perception, my back hurts. So, my hair is getting grayer. So I know they say it's a perception, but they also say if you're going to have a perception, have the best perception you can have. have the best experience you can have.
And that
in this
comes
lifetime.
into daily choices, right?
Yeah.
And so being in balance is that daily choice. I think another really interesting way to look at it too is the inward journey and the external journey. So on every spiritual path, it's a combination of external work, right? You know, the Buddhists teach this, right? It's the study, it's the Dharma, it's the your teacher, right? Who you're studying underneath, the books that you read, the conferences that you go to like this. This is that external journey of searching for finding your soul again, finding what is important to you, finding the thing that lights you up, finding the thing that sets you free, the thing that makes you serene, right? All of that is that external journey, which notoriously is more of a masculine trait, right? And the masculine energy is all about, you know, it's outward bound, right? It was the hunter, it was everything was external, whereas the feminine energy, it was the hearth and the home and bringing things inward, right? And so that's the inward journey, going inward, the intuition, the internal compass. Yeah. That's all the internal piece of it. And so, you know, our guides like to say all the time, you know, we work with people from all around the world, different ages, although I think our audience, our general members and our group, they skew a little older. And I think that's partially because, you know, as we get older, if you're not doing your spiritual work, you know, the universe is going to kick the door down and say, okay, wake up, right? Become your true authentic self.
They did that with me.
Yeah.
In the Bronx. Not an easy place to open up.
Yeah.
In New York. Yes.
Yeah, like
much easier here.
Wake up to your journey, right?
Yeah.
Wake up to your
wake
true
up,
authentic
buddy.
self. So, you know, as on our path, our guides will, it's not that it's like this oscillating thing where we're constantly like externalizing stuff. We're reading, we're studying, we've been doing the Kabbalah lately, but we've also brought in a lot of our teachings come from a combination of Hinduism, Judaism, you know, through the work with Yeshua and Magdalene, Gnosticism, which was really the early mystic work of both on Islam, I would say on Islam, right? And on the Judaic side, and then paganism, right? Which is where we started and where we opened up. And Miriam of Magdala spent time with the Druids in southern France and England. And so there's a lot of that Celtic energy there. So that's all the external teachings and work of the masculine, and then the feminine of going internal. Really, you want to talk about that journey for you a little bit, the internal journey, like as a Italian man from the Bronx, didn't want to surrender, right? Because the internal journey is all about surrendering.
What man, especially a martial artist, wants to surrender? Who wants to go to the ground? I don't. The hardest part, I think for men especially, is that surrendering part. It's like, we don't want to surrender. We don't want to surrender.
It's perceived to be weak.
Yeah, there's a weakness there.
Yeah.
And women can do it much easier. They're able to surrender into who they are. But men, we have to like just stop, and then we have to sit. And oftentimes we don't want to sit, but we have to sit, and we have to allow the energies to come into us. Sometimes it can be very difficult just to sit.
And frightening.
Yeah, it can be very frightening. I mean, as a man, you don't want to say, oh, I'm afraid, you know, but it can be very frightening for, I think for everybody too. The more times, the more you do this work, the divine feminine and masculine, the more you do the spiritual work, the more you're going to feel. The more you practice, you're opening that door, and once they put their foot in it, they're not leaving. I've tried many times. It doesn't work. So this is where the balancing of divine feminine and divine masculine comes in. You always want to practice that all the time.
Yeah, and once you surrender to the internal, whether that's through meditation, right, prayer, you know, whatever that is for you, it could be for me, it's nature.
It could be walking in nature.
It could be walking in nature. Walking in nature is, I find, one of the best ways, right, to open up to spirit. When you're in nature and you're connected to Gaia, everything starts to happen, right? The birds start to become alive. The trees will talk to you. The trees have actually talked to us. And you realize every living thing is connected to you and you are to it. And in that place, you feel that Gaia energy. You literally feel the Divine Mother speaking to you. And so on this journey, as Anthony said, as you surrender more into that inner knowing, that feminine will wake up inside of you. Right. And, you know, as a woman, I played in the masculine world of the technology industry for 25 years. So even for me as a woman, you know, having to surrender has been hard. It's been really hard, you know, because it's like we know when we're in control, when we feel like we're in control, then, you know, we feel like we've got it together. And when you surrender, like, who knows what's going to happen?
Be careful what you wish for. I can tell you that. By day, I work as a speech and language pathologist with children with special needs. And in my field, it's mostly women. So it's a very feminine part of who I am as well. But by night, well, that's another story. So I'm always balancing masculine and feminine all the time. I have to. It's a must.
Yeah. We are what they call twin flames and twin souls. And we could do a whole weekend-long thing on twin souls because it's very misunderstood what it means. People seem to think that it means your soulmate, but it's kind of, I don't want to say it's the opposite, but it's not the opposite.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, right? You know, your soulmate is someone who finishes your sentence for you. You're so connected, they're ordering what you want on the menu without even thinking, right? There's just this soul connection. Twin flames are very different. They've worked together in past lives many times. It does not have to be a couple. In fact, it could be, you know, we know twin soul friends are two sisters. It could be a mother-daughter. It could be, you know, often it's some really kind of tight relationship, like sisters or, you know, some family member, or, you know, best friends, that kind of thing, where you're here to do big work in the spiritual realm. And so because of that, it's challenging, right? Because you're not really, you know, when you're soulmates, you're doing everything for yourselves, really. And for twin flame relationships, you're doing everything it's an outward service.
Yeah.
I would say.
So, yeah.
So, yeah. Any other questions before we get?
So how do you communicate with nature, the trees,
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, you know what? We go on walks. I mean, this is in Northern California now. Go into nature, and everything is just so beautifully green. You see,
and alive. It's alive.
Literally sit in nature and be one with it. Put your hands on the trees, in the waters, the rocks. Smell everything. Just be one with it. It's almost going back to our pagan roots as well. Be one with nature. Or
our indigenous roots, really. Our indigenous elders knew so much more, right? And they've hung on to it. We've let it go in the West.
Anything you do in nature, it could be gardening as well. Creating anything of that's, you know, we live on the water.
This might be a good moment just to spend a couple minutes on intention. So, because intention is really important also when you're connecting to guides or, you know, if you're opening to channeling. Channeling and bringing forth your higher self, which is part of your guides. Remember that. Your higher self is always part of the collective. So imagine your auric field, or some people refer to it as the biofield around you, 12 to 15 feet around you. It can be higher, right? It can be wider. But guides and the collective consciousness are existing there all the time. They're there all the time. That's why people who channel and can see, sometimes when they greet Anthony, they'll say, "It's nice to meet all of you," because they can see the guides, they can see everything. So we all have that, everyone does. It's really just activating it. And you cannot activate that connection with your guides or your higher self or your connection with nature unless you intend it. So if you're sitting in nature and you're connecting to it, you have to have an intention that I know you're alive, right? If you don't believe it, it doesn't exist, right? I know you're alive. I know that you're there for me. I know that we're interconnected. You know, help serve me, guide me, give me guidance on my path so that I can be in more balance in everyday life. And it will become alive for you. I can assure you.
For any of those who here that do channel at all, I mean, we're all channelers in our own unique way. Working with your guides, put them to use, put them to work.
Yeah, put them to
Have
work.
them work for you. You know, our guides will just sit around and drink wine all night if they could, like they do every night. Where's the wine? We're like, well, but they'll say, put us to work. And so we do, we put them to work. And then they start doing the work.
It's funny because sometimes, you know, if we're not doing a session with someone, but we're just, I don't know, hanging out with friends or whatever, and I'll say to the guides, well, you know, what's our soul connection, or, you know, what's going on? And they're like, Gaia, really? You're going to put us to work? Because that means they've got to go into the Akashic records.
Right.
And that's like, you know, kind of a reading. And for them just to connect to the soul level, they see us all as light, right? There's no color, there's no size, there's no sex, there's nothing. It's just we're spirit, we're light, we're pure white light. So they're like, why do you really care about your past lives together? And I'm like, I feel a connection with this woman. I just want to know, you know. And so they've got to go to work. They've got to go into the Akash, right, and connect and find out how we're connected.
There's a little bit of me in there as well. I don't want to say it's just them. When you start doing the work, there's going to be a little bit of you.
It's blending.
Your higher self, your soul is connecting with everything. You're going to go into an expanded state the more you do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going in our collective consciousness in the world now.
This
That's
might
what's
be
happening.
too deep because we don't know the level of where everyone is at in this room. But so people will ask us all the time because we channel, you know, we're just about finishing our first book on Mary Magdalene. It's going to be out in a few months, so stay tuned for that. Magdalene said at one point in the book, so you're going to be in trouble out there when this book comes out, and someone's going to say, well, another channeled person said that you lived in Turkey, or another channeled person says that you had 3 children with Yeshua. Is one right and one wrong? Now, this message, as long as we've done this, stuff still comes to us that shocks the living, you know, pants off us, sort of thing. It's always like, really? You know, and even though we know that other dimensions exist, to feel that and to hear that from her was astonishing. So what she said was this, that maybe another channeler was connecting to another dimensional reality, not this one, not this vibration that we call Earth, not the Earth where we studied, you know, Buddhism, and there was a Muhammad at a certain timeline and time frame, and Yeshua over 2,500 years ago. That's our timeline, and that's our dimensional Earth, if you like. But there's many Earths, they say. So another channeler is tapping into another Earth, believe it or not, as crazy as that sounds.
So everything is multi-dimensional, universal. They'll speak about the soul as in everything is, how do they do it? Everything is a frequency for these everything's a frequency. Everything's a frequency, and everything's our vibrations. Multiple universes, and we are not quantum physicists.
No, but a lot of what we do in our work,
but they will speak about the soul as a quantum
is bring
aspect.
together the science and the spirituality. That is a big, I would say that's a big, I don't want to say difference, but it's a big piece in our work that is important in our teachings.
Does anyone have any other questions before we get started with the channeling?
Go into some channeling.
When I do go into channel, you can ask questions.
Questions as well.
Yeah. You're going to see a noticeable change in me. Right now, I'm pretty easygoing guy. I laugh a lot, but you'll see a change in my face, and my breath is going to slow down. It's an ujjayi breath for all of you yogi and yoginis out there. They use an ujjayi breath. And my hands are going to start to shake and things like that. So.
And that's why nature is great, right? Because it allows us to get into that meditative theta brain wave state that allows us to connect to the all.
I don't know how I do it. I still have no idea after 10 years of doing this. I just know that I can. That's all. It's just a thought away.
So should we bring through
You have a question?
Magdalene first?
Just wondering for those of us that also channel,
Yes.
is there a way for channelers to meet or come together and channel together?
It's interesting that you asked that,
Yeah, that's a good
because
question.
we also do something called Blue Soul Summit. It's a video series where we interview people across traditions in both science and spirituality. And because of that, and because of our desire to bring credibility to channeling, we brought a lot more scientists and PhDs on board early. And then we're slowly sneaking in some channelers like here and there to kind of have them together with respected people, perceived respected people, right? Because channeling for so long hasn't been respected. And so there's only 2 channelers that we've had, people who call themselves channelers, which is Paul Selig and Cryon.
Yeah.
Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. And so interestingly enough, when I was listening to some Paul Selig video, because we were going to be on a podcast right after him, our guides did not want Anthony to tune in to Paul's work. After a couple minutes, they said that's enough. And when we asked why, they said, because we don't want him to be influenced by his channeling. We don't want, the ego self, the persona self, the perceived physical self of Anthony to be affected by his channeling. We need it to be a pure channel to source. So it's interesting because we've thought about, doing something with other channelers, and it always seems to, I don't want to say fall by the wayside, but it does, right? It's almost like the universe is saying, collaborate, work together, but keep your message pure. And so when we do events and when we do retreats, we don't bring in other channelers, but we do bring in people that support the channeling work, who are channeling in their own way, but in different modalities like sound healers, yoga instructors, meditation, breath work. And so we'll bring that into our retreats to complement and supplement the work. But every single time we've tried to do so, it's almost like the universe just dismantles it. It's not happening.
Yeah, you don't see too many channelers working with each other.
Yeah.
It might be
I think we need to support each other.
Definitely, yeah.
For sure, light workers helping each other. But I do think, remember that one situation too with, because we also work with Hindu energy as well. And my personal belief is that Durga and Mary Magdalene are one and the same in terms of archetypes. Durga lights me up. Mary Magdalene lights me up. I think they're like the same energy. But it's also the way that the frequencies come through that are different. So when our guides say that we connect, and you're seeing they're trying to connect already, I can feel them starting to come through. Yeah. It's a frequency match. And so sometimes I think when there's other channelers happening kind of at the same time, the frequency match gets a little muddled.